I watched from my window as Karen, the HOA tyrant, scrambled out of my hot tub, her skin a blazing shade of teal, screaming like she'd been dunked in a vat of angry hornets. Because I'd turned my $10,000 spa into a trap of dye and jalapeno extract. That's right, I got my revenge, and oh, it felt so good. If you've ever had a nosy neighbor who thought your backyard was their personal playground, you're gonna love this. Drop a comment with your craziest HOA story, because I'm about to spill all the tea on how I turned Karen's spa day into a suburban nightmare. My name's Ryan, a systems engineer who just wanted to come home to peace after 5 days hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'd been dreaming of sinking into my hot tub, jets on full blast, a cold drink in hand, washing away the dirt and stress of the trails. 5 days of no Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just me, the trees, and the kind of quiet that makes your soul hum. But the second I stepped into my backyard in Maple Grove, my heart dropped straight into my hiking boots. My sanctuary, my private sanctuary, was a crime scene. Wet footprints smeared across my deck like a sloppy confession. A lipstick-stained wine glass sat on the edge of my hot tub, mocking me with its tacky pink smudge. A soggy towel was slung over my patio chair, dripping onto the wood like it had given up on life. And the hot tub cover? It was half on, half off, like someone had panicked mid-escape. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a random trespasser. I knew exactly who it was. Karen, the HOA president who'd once sent me a 500-word email about my unapproved string lights last Christmas. The same Karen who'd turned our quiet cul-de-sac into her personal fiefdom, finding people for grass that was too tall or mailboxes that were too modern. And now she'd crossed a line I didn't even know I had, straight into my backyard. I yanked out my phone, hands shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief, and opened the security cam app I'd installed last year after Karen's last friendly complaint. The footage loaded, and there she was, strutting into my yard like she owned the place. Sun hat tilted just so, a leopard print swimsuit stretched to its limits, and a glass of rose in her hand that probably cost more than my monthly water bill. She wasn't alone either. 3 HOA minions trailed behind her, their name tags glinting in the sun like badges of entitlement. They laughed, clinked glasses, and sank into my hot tub like it was their personal day spa. Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 times that week while I was 150 miles away, blissfully unaware. One clip even showed them with a charcuterie board, prosciutto and brie floating on a tray in my jets. I wanted to scream. That hot tub wasn't just a luxury, it was my lifeline. After my divorce 3 years ago, I'd poured every spare penny into it, dreaming of quiet nights where I could finally breathe. And now, Karen's wine-soaked crew had turned it into their personal sip-and-soak social club. I stormed over to the tub, my chest tight with fury. The water was lukewarm, murky with a sheen of sunscreen grease, and smelled like cheap perfume. Disgusting. But then I noticed something else. A tiny hose snaking out from under my fence, barely visible unless you were looking for it. My heart pounded as I followed it, the grass crunching under my boots, until I saw where it led, straight to my private well. The one I'd spent $4,500 to drill last summer. Across the street, Karen's prize-winning rose garden was blooming brighter than ever, and now I knew why. She'd been stealing my water to keep her flowers perfect while I was out of town. My vision went red. This wasn't just a hot tub invasion anymore. This was a full-on declaration of war. Across the street, Karen was probably sipping her overpriced latte, smug as ever, planning her next HOA wellness event in my backyard. She had no idea the storm that was coming. I grabbed a notebook, my hands still trembling with adrenaline, and started plotting. Step 1. Turn her spa day into a nightmare she'd never forget. I raced to the hardware store, snatching a bottle of pool tracer dye, bright teal, harmless but clingy as a bad reputation, and a vial of jalapeno extract so potent it could make a grown man cry from across the room. Legal? Check. Satisfying? Oh, you bet. I rigged the hot tub, set the jets to preheat that Friday night, and waited, my heart racing with anticipation. Karen loved her routines. I'd seen her crew roll in like clockwork. This time, I'd be ready. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange, I sat by my window, a grin spreading across my face. She'd started this fight, but I was about to finish it. I leaned against my upstairs window, heart pounding like a drum, as Karen and her HOA posse shuffled into my backyard that Friday evening, completely oblivious to the chaos I'd set in motion. The sun was just dipping below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Maple Grove, and I could already picture the headlines in our neighborhood group chat. HOA queen turned teal. You won't believe what happened next. Karen led the charge, of course, her sun hat tilted like she was auditioning for a reality show, a cooler of sparkling water in one hand and a Bluetooth speaker in the other, blasting some overplayed pop song from 2015. Her crew followed like loyal minions. There was Susan, who once tried to find a neighbor for excessive holiday cheer, and Mark, the guy who showed up to every HOA meeting with a clipboard and a superiority complex. Then there was the wild card, Mrs. Thompson, the actual HOA treasurer, who Karen had apparently roped into this unauthorized spa party. Mrs. Thompson, in her floral one-piece and flip-flops, carried a tray of lemon bars like she was hosting a bake sale. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. They didn't even glance at my house, no knock, no text, just a quick peek over the fence to make sure my car wasn't in the driveway. I'd made sure to park it down the street at my buddy Ethan's place, even leaving a fake note on my door that read, "Gone camping back Sunday," in big, bold letters. Karen took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. She set down her cooler, kicked off her sandals, and lowered herself into my hot tub with a smug little sigh, like she was Cleopatra stepping into her royal bath. Her crew followed, giggling and clinking their plastic cups of sparkling water. I could hear Karen through the security cam audio, her voice dripping with entitlement. Cheers to another fabulous HOA Friday, ladies, and Mark. Big thanks to Ryan for letting us use his tub again. He's probably off hugging a tree somewhere. My jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd crack a tooth. Hugging a tree? Oh, Karen, you're about to hug something a lot less pleasant. I hit record on my phone, the live feed from the camera streaming straight to my screen. 10 minutes in, the water started to shift. It wasn't obvious at first, just a faint teal shimmer in the fading sunlight. Susan paused mid-sip, squinting at her legs under the water. She ran a hand over her thigh, frowned, and rubbed her fingers together. Karen, is the water blue? She asked, her voice tinged with confusion. Karen waved her off, rolling her eyes. It's just the lighting, Susan. This tub always has a weird tint. Relax. That's when the jalapeno extract kicked in. It started slow, a little squirming, a casual scratch here and there. But then Mark shot up like he'd been zapped, nearly slipping on the edge of the tub, his face turning redder than a 4th of July firecracker. What the— my legs are burning, he yelped, splashing water everywhere. Karen blinked, confused, and wiped her arm. Too late. Her skin was already turning splotchy, angry red patches blooming across her chest like a bad sunburn. Susan shrieked, flailing backward and bumping into Mrs. Thompson, who dropped her lemon bars into the water with a sad little plop. The jets, oh those glorious jets, churned the jalapeno extract into a full-body assault, the heat spreading like wildfire. Karen's smug grin melted into pure panic. She launched herself out of the tub, slipping on the deck and landing on her side with a wet thud, teal water trailing behind her like she'd just wrestled a pool floatie from the deep end. I waited exactly 10 seconds, savoring every moment of their chaos, then strolled outside, phone in hand, the live feed still rolling. Karen was hunched over, dripping and scratching her arms like a cat in a flea bath, yelling at Mrs. Thompson to do something. Susan was dabbing at her eyes with a towel, whimpering about her granddaughter's recital tomorrow. Mark was pacing the lawn, muttering something about filing a formal complaint. I cleared my throat, and Karen's head snapped up. She was a mess, soaked, furious, and the exact shade of neon regret I'd hoped for. "What did you do to your tub, Ryan?" she barked, her voice cracking with indignation. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "You mean the tub on my private property that you broke into without permission? That one? Oh, I just added a little pool-safe dye and some food-grade jalapeno extract. Non-toxic, but you might want to steer clear of mirrors for a bit. That teal sticks around." Karen stood up, wobbling on her feet, her sun hat now a soggy mess on the deck. You ruined my spa day. I'm calling the cops," she screeched, pointing a teal-stained finger at me. I held up my phone, the footage still recording. "Please do, Karen. I've got 3 days of video of you trespassing on my property. I'd love to file a report. Oh, and while we're at it, let's chat about that little hose you hooked up to my well to water your roses. Pretty sure that's theft." Mrs. Thompson, still pink and steaming like a boiled lobster, turned to Karen, her voice trembling. "You said he agreed to this, Karen. Karen froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I thought he wouldn't mind, she stammered. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. You thought wrong. Across the street, my neighbor Ethan was probably sipping a beer on his porch, chuckling as he heard the commotion. He'd warned me about Karen when I moved in 2 years ago, said she'd once tried to fine him for unapproved patio furniture. I wished I'd listened then, but now I was in control. Karen stormed off, her crew trailing behind her, muttering apologies and shooting me dirty looks. Mrs. Thompson lingered just long enough to whisper, "I'm so sorry, Ryan," before scurrying after them, her flip-flops slapping against the pavement. I spent the next hour replaying the footage, laughing so hard I nearly cried. Karen's grand entrance, her teal transformation, the absolute chaos, it was better than I'd imagined. But as I uploaded a highlight reel to a private link and sent it to Ethan, I knew this was just the beginning. Karen wasn't the type to slink away quietly. She'd be back, and I'd be ready. I woke up the next morning with a grin that wouldn't quit, replaying Karen's teal-tinted meltdown in my head like it was the best movie I'd ever seen. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ethan had texted me a screenshot of the neighborhood group chat, and let me tell you, Maple Grove was on fire. The highlight reel I'd sent him last night? He'd accidentally shared it with a few neighbors, and by 8 a.m., it had spread faster than gossip at a PDA meeting. I scrolled through the messages, my coffee going cold as I laughed out loud. "Is that Karen from the HOA?" one neighbor wrote, followed by a string of crying laughing emojis. "She looks like she lost a fight with a Smith." Another chimed in. "I knew she was shady, but this is next level." By noon, the video had hit the Maple Grove Facebook group, racking up 42 shares and a meme that someone had whipped up, a screenshot of Karen mid-screen with the caption, "When the HOA says, just one dip, but now you're a human blueberry." I nearly spit out my coffee. Karen had gone from feared HOA dictator to the neighborhood punchline overnight, and I was living for every second of it. But while I was basking in the glow of my petty victory, Karen was across the street, pacing her front porch like a caged tiger, her phone glued to her ear. I could see her through my kitchen window, still sporting faint teal streaks on her arms, her face twisted in a scowl that could curdle milk. She wasn't just licking her wounds, she was plotting. I knew that look. I'd seen it last year when she tried to find my neighbor Jessica for unapproved garden gnomes. Karen didn't do defeat. She did revenge. And I had a feeling I was about to be her next target. Sure enough, by 2 p.m., a fancy envelope appeared in my mailbox, no stamp, just the HOA logo embossed on the front like it was a royal decree. I tore it open, half expecting a glitter explosion, but instead, I found a letter on crisp, cream-colored paper. "Dear Mr. Ryan Carter," it began, "it has come to the attention of the Maple Grove Homeowners Association that your property is in violation of community standards due to unauthorized modifications, including excessive exterior lighting and potential water system tampering. A fine of $400 is hereby issued, with further penalties to follow if not addressed within 7 days." My jaw dropped. Unauthorized modifications? Excessive lighting? I'd installed 2 motion sensor lights after Karen's hot tub heist, and they were barely bright enough to scare off a raccoon. And water system tampering? That was rich, coming from the woman who'd been siphoning my well water for her roses. I laughed so hard I had to sit down, the letter crumpling in my hands. This was Karen's big comeback? A fake fine for a property that wasn't even under HOA jurisdiction? See, my house sat on the edge of the development, technically outside the HOA charter. I checked the bylaws when I moved in 3 years ago, mostly because Ethan had warned me about Karen's power trips. She had zero authority over me, and she knew it. But she was banking on me panicking, maybe even paying the fine to avoid her wrath. "Oh, Karen, you picked the wrong guy to mess with." I grabbed my tablet and drove straight to Mrs. Thompson's house. She'd seemed genuinely horrified at the hot tub incident, and I figured she'd be my best shot at getting the HOA board on my side. She answered the door in a bathrobe, her hair still damp from a shower, probably trying to scrub off the last of the teal dye. "Ryan, I'm so sorry about yesterday," she stammered, her cheeks flushing. I waved her off, holding up the letter. "Karen's at it again. She's trying to find me for unauthorized modifications, even though I'm not in the HOA. I need your help to shut this down." Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened as she read the letter, her hands trembling. "She sent this herself," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "She's been doing this to others too. Fake fines, unapproved letters." I thought she'd stopped after the board warned her last year. She looked up at me, her voice firming. "I'll call an emergency meeting." Can you? Can you bring the footage? I grinned, feeling a surge of adrenaline. Oh, I've got more than footage, Mrs. Thompson. I've got receipts. Back at my house, I spent the afternoon compiling my evidence. Every second of Karen's hot tub invasions, screenshots of her fake newsletter from last month where she'd claimed I'd generously donated my spa for HOA use. And even water meter logs showing the unexplained dips in pressure while I was away. My favorite, though, was a grainy clip from 2 months ago. Karen banging on Jessica's door with a tape measure, yelling about her non-compliant porch swing. I labeled the file Operation Karen Takedown and burned it onto a flash drive, my heart racing with anticipation. This wasn't just about my hot tub anymore. This was about taking down a suburban tyrant. While I was putting the finishing touches on my presentation, the neighborhood group chat was still buzzing. Ethan sent me a new meme. Karen's face photoshopped onto a blueberry pie with the caption, "Fresh from Ryan's Hot Tub Bakery." I laughed, but a tiny knot of worry twisted in my gut. Karen wasn't done. I could feel it. And as I glanced out my window, I saw her marching down the street, a clipboard in hand, heading straight for the HOA president's house. She was doubling down, and I had to be ready for whatever she threw at me next. I stood in the Maple Grove Community Center that Tuesday evening, my tablet under my arm and a fire in my chest, ready to take down Karen once and for all in front of the entire HOA board. The room buzzed with tension as neighbors whispered in the back, some still snickering over the viral Blueberry Karen memes that had taken over our group chat. Mrs. Thompson had called the emergency meeting, and I'd been invited, not as an HOA member, but as a concerned resident, with evidence that couldn't be ignored. The board sat at a long table, their faces a mix of curiosity and exhaustion. Mr. Daniels, the HOA president, adjusted his glasses, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Susan and Mark were there too, still sporting faint teal stains on their arms, their glares burning holes into me from across the room. And then there was Karen, who'd shown up 10 minutes late, her arms crossed and her face a mask of barely contained fury. She tried to scrub off the dye, but her ears still had a faint turquoise tint, and I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. I stepped up to the front, plugging my tablet into the projector, my heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. "Thank you for having me," I started, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "I'm here to talk about a pattern of abuse that's been going on in Maple Grove for far too long, led by none other than your president, Karen." A murmur rippled through the room. Karen scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear, but I didn't flinch. I clicked to my first slide, a still from the hot tub footage, Karen in her leopard print swimsuit, sipping rose like she owned my backyard. "This is Karen trespassing on my property 3 times in 1 week while I was out of town. She didn't ask. She didn't have permission. And she didn't stop there." I played the clip, the audio crackling through the room as Karen's voice rang out. "Big thanks to Ryan for letting us use his tub again. He's probably off hugging a tree somewhere." The board shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I clicked to the next slide, a screenshot of her fake HOA newsletter from last month, claiming I'd donated my hot tub for community use. "She published this without my consent, using my name to justify her actions," I said, my voice rising with every word. "And then there's this." I pulled up the water meter logs, showing the unexplained dips in pressure. "She's been stealing water from my private well to irrigate her garden. $4, $500 worth of water I paid for, siphoned off without a shred of permission." Across the street, Ethan was probably refreshing the group chat, waiting for updates from a neighbor who'd snuck in to watch the meeting. He texted me earlier, "Give him hell, man. Karen's reign ends tonight." I planned to. Back in the room, I played my final clip, the grainy footage of Karen banging on Jessica's door with a tape measure, yelling about her non-compliant porch swing. A board member gasped she charged wine tastings to the landscaping budget. The room erupted in whispers. Mr. Daniels rubbed his temples, muttering, "This is a disaster." Karen shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. "This is ridiculous. He booby-trapped his hot tub to target me. He's the one breaking the rules." I turned to her, my voice calm but sharp. "You broke into my yard, Karen. You used my water, my property, and my name without asking. And now you've got the whole board covered in teal dye because you couldn't respect boundaries." The room went silent, then someone in the back snorted. Then another. Soon, half the room was laughing, the tension breaking like a dam. Mr. Daniels called for a vote, his voice weary. "All in favor of removing Karen from her position as HOA president, pending a full investigation?" Every hand went up, except Karen's, of course. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. her heels clicking down the hall like a retreating army. I followed at a distance, watching her stomp across the street to her house, muttering under her breath. I half expected her to turn around and scream at me, but instead, she flipped me off and slammed her front door. By the next morning, the HOA sent out an official notice. Karen was out, and an audit of the board's funds was underway. Neighbors started talking, finally free from her reign of terror. Jessica told me Karen had once threatened to report her son's lemonade stand as an unpermitted business. Another neighbor, Tom, said she'd measured his hedges with a ruler, claiming they were a quarter-inch too tall. Karen had run Maple Grove like her personal kingdom, and now the peasants were revolting. But just when I thought I'd won, a new message popped up in my inbox, a county clerk, sounding baffled, asking why someone had submitted a hand-drawn map with my house circled in red, labeled non-compliant parcel. My stomach dropped. Karen wasn't done. She was trying to expand the HOA boundaries to include my property, a desperate last-ditch effort to drag me under her control. I grabbed my deed and the flash drive of evidence, my blood boiling all over again. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. I sat in the county clerk's office that Wednesday morning, my deed and flash drive of evidence spread out on the desk, my blood still simmering from Karen's latest stunt, trying to annex my property into the HOA like she was staging a suburban coup. The clerk, a guy named Greg with a coffee stain on his tie, couldn't stop laughing as he flipped through Karen's hand-drawn map, her red ink scrawl labeling my house a non-compliant parcel, with little angry exclamation points in the margins. "This is the wildest thing I've seen in 15 years, Greg chuckled, wiping a tear from his eye. She even wrote a whole section called Annexation Strategy, like she's Napoleon invading your backyard. I forced a smile, but inside, I was fuming. Karen had lost her HOA throne, her reputation was in tatters, and yet here she was, still coming for me. I handed Greg the footage of her hot tub invasions and the water meter log showing her theft. "She's been harassing me for weeks," I said, my voice tight. "This needs to stop." Greg's supervisor came over, took one look at the map, and burst out laughing too. They denied Karen's petition on the spot, flagged her file for future scrutiny, and handed me a copy of her submission for my records. I drove home with a mix of relief and rage, the crumpled map on my passenger seat fueling my next move. Karen wanted a war? She was about to get one she'd never forget. Back at my house, I called up my buddy Ethan, who'd been following the drama like it was his favorite soap opera. "She tried to annex my property, man," I said, pacing my kitchen. "Can you believe this woman?" Ethan laughed so hard I heard him snort through the phone. "You've got to hit her where it hurts, Ryan. Her garden, those roses are her pride and joy." A light bulb went off in my head. Karen's roses. The ones she'd been watering with my well water for months. The ones that had won her best garden at last year's Maple Grove block party, complete with a tacky plastic trophy she displayed on her porch like it was an Oscar. Oh, this was going to be good. I called a plumber I'd worked with last year, a guy named Mike who owed me a favor after I helped him fix a busted irrigation system. "I need to redirect a line," I told him, my voice low and conspiratorial. "Nothing illegal, just creative." Mike showed up an hour later, his truck rattling with tools, and we got to work. First, we installed a backflow valve on my well to stop Karen from ever tapping into it again. Then, we found the old gray water tank in my backyard, a relic from the previous owner, still holding a non-toxic but very unpleasant mix of runoff from years past. Think stagnant water with a hint of compost and despair. We redirected just enough of it into the hose Karen had illegally hooked up, setting it to flush the next time she turned on her sprinklers. It wasn't dangerous, but it was going to stink. Badly. That afternoon, at exactly 2:47 p.m., I sat on my deck with a lemonade. My phone propped up to record the show. Across the street, Karen flipped on her sprinkler system, probably dreaming of her roses soaking up another free drink. Instead, a brown mist sprayed across her yard, the stench hitting her like a freight train. Her roses drooped instantly, like they'd given up on life, and the smell was a mix of hot garbage and regret. Karen ran outside in her flip-flops, gagging, her hands flailing as she tried to yank the hose out of the ground. Too late. Her pristine lawn turned into a swampy nightmare, the brown sludge pooling around her award-winning flower beds. She screamed, her voice echoing down the street. "What is this?" I sipped my lemonade, a grin spreading across my face. "That, Karen," I muttered to myself, "is justice." While Karen was battling her sewage-soaked disaster, the neighborhood group chat was lighting up with reactions to her HOA ousting. Jessica posted a photo of her son's lemonade stand with the caption, "Finally free from Karen's tyranny." Tom shared a story about how Karen had once left a note on his car for parking too close to the curb. But then a new message caught my eye. A neighbor named Sarah wrote, "Heads up, Ryan, I saw Karen talking to a city compliance officer this morning. Looked serious." My stomach twisted. Of course, Karen couldn't just take her loss and move on. She had to scorch the earth on her way out. I glanced across the street, where Karen was now on her phone, gesturing wildly at her ruined garden, her face a mask of fury. Whatever she was planning, I had a feeling it was going to be her final blow, and I needed to be ready. I stood on my deck that Friday morning, watching a city compliance officer named Carl inspect my hot tub setup. My stomach in knots as I waited to see if Karen's final desperate play would actually stick. She'd filed a complaint, throwing every code violation she could think of at me, from improper drainage to unauthorized lighting, hoping to drag me down with her. But I was ready to end this war once and for all. Carl, a middle-aged guy with a clipboard and a no-nonsense attitude, poked around the hot tub, checked the valve connections, and scribbled notes, his brow furrowed. I'd handed him everything up front: permits, water hookup records, even the footage of Karen trespassing and stealing my well water. I brewed him a cup of coffee while he worked, trying to keep my cool, but inside, I was a mess. What if Karen had found some loophole? What if I'd gone too far with the sewage prank? Across the street, Karen was on her porch, arms crossed, watching with a smirk that made my skin crawl. Her garden was still a wilted mess, the stench lingering despite her attempts to hose it down, and I could tell she thought she had me cornered. After what felt like an eternity, Carl handed me a clean report, his voice gruff. "Everything checks out, Mr. Carter. No violations here. Whoever filed this complaint wasted my time and theirs." He paused, glancing at Karen's house. "If you find out who it was, let them know false reports can have consequences." I grinned, relief flooding through me like a cool breeze. "Oh, I know exactly who it was, Carl. And I've got a plan for that too." He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask, just tipped his hat and drove off in his white truck, leaving me standing on my deck with a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't done with Karen, not yet. She'd tried to ruin me one too many times, and now it was time to flip the narrative for good. I spent the afternoon planning the ultimate counterstrike, a neighborhood barbecue I called the Jetstream Jubilee, a celebration of clean water, clear boundaries, and honest neighbors. I printed flyers with a cartoon hot tub wearing a crown, a tiny sign floating in the water that read, "Karen not welcome." I invited the whole street, HOA members and non-members alike, even Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Daniels. I even sent one to Karen, not because I wanted her there, but because I wanted her to know she couldn't hide from this. That Saturday, my backyard was packed with neighbors, the air filled with the smell of grilled burgers and the sound of laughter. Ethan brought his famous potato salad, Jessica set up her son's lemonade stand in the corner, and Tom hooked up a speaker, playing classic rock that had everyone tapping their feet. Mrs. Thompson showed up with a tray of brownies, her smile brighter than I'd ever seen. "I can't believe we're finally free of her," she whispered, glancing across the street. Karen's house was dark, her curtains drawn, but I knew she was watching. I could feel her eyes on us, her anger simmering like a pot about to boil over. As the sun dipped low, I gathered everyone around the hot tub, a cold drink in my hand. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. "This isn't just a barbecue, it's a celebration of standing up for what's right." Karen thought she could run Maple Grove like her personal kingdom, but we showed her that boundaries matter. The crowd cheered, raising their drinks in a toast. I grinned, pointing to the hot tub. "And to make sure she never forgets, I've got a new addition." I unveiled a tiny floating sign in the water, "Jets only, Karen's not welcome," with a rubber duck painted teal, a little crown on its head. I'd named him Sir Splash-a-Lot, and the crowd roared with laughter. While we partied, I posted the final update to the neighborhood Facebook group. "The Jets are clear, and peace is restored, thanks to all of you." Oh, and Karen's garden might need a little TLC after her sprinkler mishap. I attached a photo of the barbecue, the hot tub sign front and center, and hit post. The reactions flooded in. Neighbors were furious on my behalf, not because of the prank, but because Karen couldn't let go. She'd lost her power, her audience, and, as I later learned from Mrs. Thompson, her voting rights in the HOA. Her membership was suspended pending an ethics review, and her garden? After I'd shut down her illegal water tap, her roses had withered, and her sprinkler system was flagged for costly repairs. Her best garden trophy sat on her porch, a sad reminder of her fall from grace. Karen doesn't talk to anyone now. She walks with her head down, still wearing long sleeves to hide the last hints of teal dye. I heard she's trying to sell her house, but word travels fast in Maple Grove. No one wants to buy the home of the HOA dictator who got doused in dye and sewage. As for me, I soak in my hot tub every Sunday, Sir Splash-A-Lot bobbing beside me, a cold drink in my hand and a smile on my face. Peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes it's a well-timed party and a little suburban justice. If you love this story, drop a comment with your favorite part. I'd love to hear what made you laugh the most. And if you've got your own Karen to deal with, hit that subscribe button for more ideas on how to take back your peace.